What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Waters. Welcome to Life to Metal. Going to be discussing albums that define thrash metal today. A few months ago, I did albums that define heavy metal, and those went over really well. I enjoyed doing them. Got a lot of discussion with people on those. It was a lot of fun. So I'm going to be doing the same thing, only this time with thrash metal. I polled 50 people. I got back nearly 50 answers, and one person just could not give me one, so I took both their answers, but everybody else I made do one. And I ended up with a top 22 albums that define thrash metal. Now, 22 through 6 are all ones that got one answer each. So they're not necessarily in order, but for the sake of fun, we'll just say they're in order. But then from 6 through 1, those got multiple votes from people, and some of these may shock you. Actually, a few of them surprised me that people picked them. But the ones in the top 5 really didn't surprise me, but the order might. We'll see. All right, so I'm going to start right off with this one. This one was chosen a last-minute decision by somebody. Actually, this is Ron Haggerty. Metal Ron, he's gone under many names. He does, but Ron Haggerty is his YouTube channel. And Metal Ron actually chose a different album at first, and in the last minute, he goes, "Can I change my answer?" I don't care. Sure, why not? So he chose Violence, Eternal Nightmare. And yeah, I mean, this is just a vicious thrash album. Anybody into thrash knows this. Most of these albums are pretty well known. So yeah, but I can't complain about this one at all. Good choice. I mean, vicious thrash metal. You know, just hammering over the brain, audio assault to the brain kind of thing. And a great album. This one kind of came out at the during the height of the PMRC and all that craziness. So there's actually, I think, only 8 songs on this record, 7 songs. Some of the songs got pulled at the last minute. They were later released on an EP, but regardless, because of the offensive language or the offensive lyrics. In any case, that was number 22, chosen by Ron Haggerty. Like I said, though, him changing his minute to last actually knocked number 1 down to a tie with number 2. So here we go. Next one up. This was Jim Willis, who also does YouTube. Jim Willis chose, and I am shocked that this one only got 1 vote. Ride the Lightning by Metallica. Fantastic album. I mean, this is just an all-time thrash metal classic. I remember when this thing came out, people were a little upset that they did Fade to Black. It was like, oh, Metallica did a ballad. Whatever. In any case, it's a great album. It is a thrasher. It's just, I mean, it's got freaking Creeping Death on it. I mean, it's just one of the greatest thrash songs of all time, in my opinion. So, yeah, very cool choice by Jim Willis. This one was a bit more surprising to me. This one I didn't expect anybody would pick this one. And it's a personal favorite of mine, but it's, when I think albums that define thrash metal, it's not necessarily one that comes to my mind at first. But this was chosen by guitarist Robert Gutierrez from Ultimatum. He chose From the Underground and Below by Overkill. Cool choice, great band, obviously. Overkill, definitely one of the front runners of thrash metal. Just not an album I would have chosen right away as, you know, a definition of thrash metal. But regardless, I think it's a great album. It's got a bit more groove to it here and there. You know, Bobby Blitz is Bobby Blitz. He sounds like himself. He doesn't sound like anybody else, and I love him for it. But yeah, and like I said, this is a personal favorite. I actually love From the Underground and Below. And of all the more recent, not this recent, it's probably like 25 years old now, albums from Overkill, this is one that you actually hear them play live still quite a bit, several songs. So yeah, great album, Overkill, From the Underground and Below, chosen by Robert Gutierrez. This one was a little bit shocking too. I was surprised. I don't know why. It actually fits perfectly. This one was chosen by Roger Dale Martin. Roger Dale Martin, who was in Vengeance Rising, who was in Die Happy. He's got a brand new solo album coming out called Roxology on ROXX Records. Roxology, the word has nothing to do with ROXX Records, just so you know. It is an instrumental album. But in any case, he chose S.O.D, Stormtroopers of Death, Speak English or Die. This album, in today's, people would lose their mind if this came out today. I mean, it was tongue-in-cheek, supposed to be offensive, but these days, you know, people would just lose their mind and they'd be canceled over it. But in any case, this is definitely more of a hardcore meets heavy metal approach, which to me was what thrash metal was. Thrash metal took the intensity, the speed, and the attitude of punk, combined it with the riffing, the talent, the guitar solos, and whatnot of heavy metal. And that's what you definitely get here. A little more, like I said, as opposed to Anthrax, because there are 2 Anthrax members on this album. Well, I mean, you actually get 3 Anthrax if you count Anthony. Excuse me, if you count out. I forgot his freaking name. Bass player, come on, help me out here. gosh, I can't remember his name. Nuclear Assault bass player. Whatever, he also was in Anthrax for a while. But then, of course, you got on vocals Billy Milano. So, yeah, this is an odd choice, but a good one. I mean, I don't know why I think it's odd. I guess I just didn't expect anybody to pick this. But Stormtroopers of Death. Because Sergeant D is coming, and you're on his list. I love this record. So anyhow, this one is another one I was kind of surprised. I actually thought that this person, and this is number 18, I actually thought this person would pick something by either Slayer or Sodom or Destruction, just knowing his tastes. But this is Avenger of Blood drummer, Shannon FRYE, and he chose Sacrifice, Soldier of Misfortune, and Canadian thrash band, fantastic album. I mean, I love this album. Hadn't spun it in a while, and when he chose it, I'm like, oh man, I got to pull that out. A little bit melodic, but really, it's just a hammer to the brain. You know, an audio assault to your brain, and it's just everything on here is fantastic. You know, you got the machine gun riffing, you've got the manic guitar solos, you got the fast down, you know, quick drum beats and the double bass. You got a little bit of everything on here. This is a great album. Great choice from Shannon. Again, not one that I thought of when I had to make my own choice. This was not one that came to mind at first. But again, like I told him, I think it's a great choice. This one I expected to be chosen. I didn't expect only one person would choose it, but Patrick Best from Ritual Servant, guitar player, vocalist from Ritual Servant, picked Among the Living by Anthrax. I remember this one came out. I was in college. We devoured this thing. I was already a huge Anthrax fan to begin with, having grown up, you know, in the area where they were popular in the East Coast. But this album, yeah, this is just a beast of an album. Again, there's a little bit more of a hardcore vibe as opposed to, say, their first album and even the second album. You know, the punk ethic wasn't there. To me, Fistful of Metal was more of a new wave of British heavy metal album on speed. This one here has a bit of a hardcore vibe to it, and a bit of a punk attitude to it, but still, this is a great album. I mean, this album reads like one of their greatest hits albums. You know, Among the Living, Caught in the Mosh, I Am the Law, Indians, One World, ADI, Horror of Life, Imitation of Life. I mean, this album is just fantastic. Again, great choice, and that one was by Patrick Best. This next one I thought was interesting, and I'm going to look it up real quick because what he said about it I thought was really cool. This is Vic Stone of the band Vindicator, among others, but his most popular band, probably the thrash band Vindicator. He said, so the obvious answer is Kill 'Em All. It's where thrash started, just like Black Sabbath is where Doom started. It's the album that spawned endless thrash bands, but thrash grew into something else and branched out in many directions. I believe Master of Puppets defines thrash best. It's articulate and intelligent. It means it's mean, it's fast, but it's not all blazing speed. It's a complex album, including melody and slower songs to break up any possible monotony. It's never overbearing. To me, that's the album I'd show that the person who didn't know what thrash was. So, I mean, that's a fantastic answer. So I told him I'm going to read your answer because he's absolutely, you know, right. Now, again, to me, I chose mine before everybody else did because I didn't want to be biased. I didn't want to be swayed by other people's opinions because that opinion might have changed my mind. But I stuck with my initial choice. So, but this is a great choice from Vic, and I can't disagree with him. It's definitely a solid album. I mean, most people consider it one of Metallica's best. Many people consider it their very best. So, and Metallica definitely were one of the beginnings of thrash metal. I mean, it's like saying heavy metal and Black Sabbath in the same sentence. You know, thrash and Metallica kind of go together. All right, next up, and excuse my sniffling and coughing, and I've got allergies, and they're really bad today. So, I even broke my own rule of bringing a drink into my office, just because I'm having such a hard time with nasal stuff. All right, next one was chosen by Jürgen Aumann from the German thrash band Repent. He's the vocalist for Repent, among other bands again. But he chose Testament, The Legacy. And he actually said, this is the greatest thrash metal debut ever recorded. So there you go. Again, I was a bit surprised. I expected a different response from him. I'm not sure why, but this was his choice. I think it's a great choice. It's a great album. I'm glad Testament made the list because they definitely are one of the defining bands of thrash metal. So I can't see any reason not to give this album, you know, its due. I always thought Testament had a little bit more melody than a lot of the thrash bands out there. They definitely had some talented guitar players, and yeah, this album is fantastic. So what can I say? Again, this next one, I am surprised it only got 1 vote. I really thought this would get at least 2, if not more votes, but it only got 1 vote. Chosen by Ryan ROEBUCK of MOTIVIK, and I believe he was also announced as maybe the 2nd guitar player in Ritual Servant. Hopefully I'm not wrong on that. But he is the guitar player and I believe vocalist for MOTIVIK, and he chose Megadeth, Rust in Peace. A complex album, a technical album, a super heavy album. It is just one of my all-time favorites. It is one that I tend to think of when I think of thrash metal. A lot of people pick this as Megadeth's best, and you know, what can I say? I don't necessarily disagree with them. This is a fantastic album. I did get to see them play this whole album live. That was really special. Enjoyed it quite a bit. It was just like maybe 10 years ago when they did that. They actually released that on DVD. So yeah, yep, great album. Like I said, kind of like Master Puppets, it's complex. It's, you know, it's not all speed all the time. It's got melody. It's got, you know, it kind of has this woven tapestry of different emotions and feels and tempos, and it just all fits together perfectly. All right, the next 3 I'm showing on CD because I don't have them on vinyl yet. All right, so what do we got here? This was a really surprising choice. This was Glenn Rogers. Glenn Rogers is most known for being in Hyrax, Heretic. What else has he been in? Primal, Steel Vengeance, Vengeance Rising, Deliverance. And right now he's in a band called Final Decree, and they just released their first single. But he chose Viking, Man of Straw. 2nd album from this band. I believe it's from LA, California, regardless. I love this record. This is a fantastic album. I would love to get this on vinyl one of these days. I just never run across a decently priced copy. Regardless, this is a great album from them. Not only great album musically, but great album lyrically. It's well thought out. It's kind of a thinking man's album. Everything about this thing is really just fantastic. Again, like Testament, I think this album is a bit melodic. Their first album was a little bit more chaotic and heavy. This one's still a little bit more melodic, but it's still, you know, a hammer to the brain, you know, of thrash metal. I mean, I can't disagree with his choice whatsoever. Alrighty then, Matthew B. Hunt, the owner of BoonsOverstock.com and Retroactive Records and Brutal Planet Records. I asked him his choice, and he chose. And again, I was surprised at this because I absolutely know one of his favorite albums is a Slayer record, but he chose Believer, Sanity Obscure. Now this is Believer going a little bit more progressive than their first album. Their first album was just straight up speed, thrash, fantastic album. I love Believer's first album. I actually have that one on vinyl. I just don't have this one on vinyl. But in any case, this is Sanity Obscure, their 2nd album. This is just, again, slightly progressive. And not all speed. Again, it's kind of this tapestry woven of different tempos and emotions and feels. But again, it is a heavy album. It's got a lot of that, you know, straightforward, what I call machine gun riffing. That, you know, kind of riffing, and memorable songs, kind of gritty vocals, shouted vocals. Everything about this thing is kind of cool. Also, it has that little kind of opera / orchestral piece there called Day Sari, I believe, or Day of Wrath. And there's also a cover of a U2 song on here, which is unusual, but they do a great job of it, and which is called Like a Song. So anyhow, great album from them. Great choice from Matthew Hunt. And like I said, I know when he's told me before some of his favorite albums, and Slayer was always his #1, so I was surprised that was one he picked. All right, next up. This one definitely surprised me. This one was from Kevin KOHLLHASE, or the Metal War God, WarGod60 on YouTube. The Metal War God, he's way involved in metal. He's a metal fanatic. His house is a museum to metal. His radio program is all metal. His YouTube channel is all metal. But he's also a big fan of hard rock, thrash metal, and death metal, and those kind of things. But he chose Annihilator, Refresh the Demon. Again, I don't have this one on vinyl, but I do like this album. This album has a lot of groove to it, in my opinion. It's got almost a Pantera influence, although, you know, I'm not sure that Scott Scott. I'm sure not Jeff Waters would agree with that, but that's kind of what I think of when I think of this particular album. There's a bit groove to it. But this is a great album. I love it. And I have no problem including this in a list of albums that define thrash metal. And definitely a band that helped define thrash metal. Even though it's kind of were latecomers. I mean, they come around, what, 88, 89? They were still, you know, one of those bands that helped define that genre of music that is still around and still popular today. And there's whole crops of young bands playing the same style of music, you know, that thrash metal sound. So, all right, next up we got number 10. Bill Bafford picked this one. Bill ROXX record. He also owns nolifetilmetal Records, and I am his partner in that. And that I do all the graphics for him. And that he chose Human Sacrifice. Now, for me, this album is essential. I know some people don't like it because it's a Christian band, but this album is just absolutely brutal. Everything about it. The recording is just raw. It's got youthful energy that, you know, the timing's not perfect here. It's you know, it sways and flows and timing. It's just so vicious and brutal, and nothing sounded like this when it came out. What, 1988 or 87 when this thing came out? I think it was 88 when it finally came out. But almost pushing the boundaries of death metal at times, but never quite, you know, going into that direction. Just great stuff. Roger Martinez has a very unusual style. Some people know I sang for this band for their reunion in 2004. Thanks to them for 2 years, 2004, 2006. And the story that I got from one of the singers was actually one of the guitar players was that, you know, when they tried out Roger to sing for the band, they were like, "Oh man, that guy's awful. He's perfect. Put him in." So the guy's name is Larry Farkas, who's the guitar player I was talking about. There's Larry's picture right here. But funny story about Larry. We were sitting after a show one day. We were at a restaurant eating because we're starving after a show, and the waitress walks by and she's got this big pile of nachos on her tray. And Larry's like, "Oh, check out those nachos. Those are disgusting." And you know, 2 minutes later, the waitress said, "Can I take your order?" "Yeah, I'll have the nachos." Larry's a trip. So that nacho story kind of reminded me of, you know, what of his choosing of Roger. It's like, "Oh man, that's disgusting. You're hired. You're perfect." So anyhow, I love this record. So it's a personal favorite of mine. It is one of the ones that I think of when I think of albums that define thrash metal. Now, it isn't the one I picked for this video, but it is an album I love. All right, now this is a guy who had two choices. He said he could not break it down. He had to pick two. He would not pick between the two. So I'm like, you know what? This guy's awesome. He deserves to get two. But Jason Sherlock is his name. Jason Sherlock, who played in Paramecium. He played in the black metal band Horde. He played for Mortification in the beginning. And he chose Sodom, Agent Orange, German thrash metal. I mean, most people think of this as, you know, one of Sodom's very best, if not their best. I like this album a lot. But for me, I really like Cold Red and M16 a lot. But regardless, Agent Orange is a perfect choice. Glad it's in this list of albums that define thrash metal. Definitely glad Sodom made the list for bands that define thrash metal. Even if it did only get one vote, it's a great album from German thrash metal band Sodom. Another band, only one vote, but I'm glad they made the list. Rob Whitlock, bass player for Ultimatum, among others. But he chose Death Angel, the Ultraviolence. Bunch of young kids at this time. It was a big deal because these guys were all like teenagers for the most part when this album came out. They were all like related cousins, I believe it was, and coming out of the you know, Southern California thrash scene. And this album is chaotic. I tend to like albums like Act 3 better, but still, when you think of just pure youthful energy and aggression, much like that Vengeance album, this album fits right in there. I put those two albums, I put right side by side. I actually did, that's why I put them in this tier. And again, youthful energy, just pure aggression, just a band trying to prove themselves and show everybody how heavy and fast they are. That's definitely what they did here. Death Angel, the Ultraviolence. Yeah, I knew this band next up was going to make the list. Did not expect that it would get only one vote, but it did get one vote. This is Pleasure of the Flesh, chosen by Rob Caldwell, who does Texas Metal Radio, who does the Metal Roundtable on YouTube, among other things. He is also a sound engineer and does mastering and remastering of heavy metal records and stuff like that. So anyhow, he's definitely got, you know, a brain for metal, and he chose the Second album by Exodus, and I love this record. I don't care, you know, what people think if they don't like Solstice as much as they like, you know. I just think this is a fantastic album. Like Brain Dead, that's just another fantastic song. Chemi King, Seeds of Hate, Pleasure of the Flesh, just a great album. Again, Hammer to the Brain. Exodus were definitely one of the early thrash bands, a band that deserves to be in a list of albums that define thrash metal. All right, the next one was chosen by Rob Warner, who played in a band called Warner. Probably most known for playing in Heathen's Rage, East Coast heavy metal, speed metal band, but he chose Overkill, Fuel the Fire. Now this one I expected would get at least one, and I'm glad it did. This is their second time in here. Robert Gutierrez choosing From the Underground. This being their first full-length album. This thing is just, again, it's raw. It's a raw recording. It's not, doesn't have super great production, but that's part of the charm of it. Again, a hammer to the brain, an audio assault to your brain, and it's just prime Overkill. So Raise the Dead, rotten to the core. Definitely punk. Obviously a punk influence in there. There's No Tomorrow, Second Son, and Hammerhead. Fuel the Fire, Blood and Iron, Kill at Command, and Overkill, which of course now is Overkill Part 1. And yeah, just one of the early bands in the scene, even though they were an East Coast band, and most people think of the scene coming from California. Bands like Overkill and Anthrax were from the East Coast. Okay, we are at number 5. So Overkill was number 6. Number 5 got, let's see here, I did make notes so I wouldn't get these out of order. Number 5 got 2 votes. Oddly enough, both these people from Texas. And this is Rick Perry, who was in Gamicide, and also who he's now the guitar player in Iron Jaw, and Carcass John Fossum from the Metal Roundtable. They chose Razor, Violent Restitution. Of all the Razor albums, it was really cool that 2 people chose the same one. And this is among one of my favorite Razor albums too. So again, Canadian thrash metal. This is yeah, unlike say Master of Puppets or a I don't know, unlike Master of Puppets, which I think is more of a complex album. This one is all about speed and aggression, and again that just audio assault to your brain, the constant assault to your brain, and that's exactly what Razor is. But yet they still have melody, they still have hooks, and I just think that this band by this time really had figured out what they wanted to sound like and came up with their, you know, their Master of Puppets, their Rain in Blood, their defining album. And a lot of people do agree that Violent Restitution was the prime, or is the prime Razor album. All right, now we are at number 3. I'm sorry, 4. Yeah, 4. This was chosen by 4 people. Really shocked that this was not number 1. It was my pick. Okay, so I'm one of the 4. It was also picked by Tony Lee, who was a guitar player for Heathen's Rage and Railroad Jerks. He played bass in Railroad Jerks, I believe. Jeff McCormick, McRockmit's World on YouTube, and Randy Michaud, or Trog, who does a radio show on Stone Groove Records, does a Stone Groove radio show. But anyhow, we all chose Metallica, Kill 'Em All. This was an album that just, when it came out in 1983, I was in high school. This album dominated me. I mean, there was just nothing like this at the time. I mean, sure, there was a lot, tapes out there with tape trading, and we had heard stuff here and there from other bands, but this was like the first full-length album that just was a constant, fast. I mean, yeah, you had Accept with something like Fast as a Shark, but this is Fast as a Shark all the way through. You know what I mean? It's just, there's nothing else quite like this in 1983. Yeah. Dave Mustaine had a big hand in this album as well, from Megadeth, writing some of these songs. But regardless, this album just, I didn't know that in '83. I had no idea. I mean, I was living in New Jersey, so I had no idea. Bought this as a new release, knew nothing about Mustaine yet. So this album just awesome. Again, much like the Vengeance Rising or album I talked about earlier, it's got a youthful energy. It's not perfect. You know what I mean? It's got I'm sure I can't say there's timing issues. I don't know. I've never sat there with a metronome and checked the time. But it just sounds live. It just sounds raw. It just sounds you know, like they went into a studio and they just played their guts out, and that's exactly what you're going to get with Kill 'Em All. Hit the Lights, Four Horsemen, Motor Breath, Jump in the Fire, Anesthesia, Point Teeth, bass solo with Whiplash, Phantom Lord, No Remorse, Seek and Destroy, Metal Militia. A lot of people, I'm assuming, would pick this as their number one. But in my list, it is number 4. Number 4. All right, number 3. Picked by 5 people. Alex Cantwell. Alex played bass in Ultimatum for a while, but he's actually playing right now in a doom band called Red Mesa. Guy's played in a lot of different bands, but Alex Cantwell. Terry Dunn from Banshee picked this one. Michael Campbell, who he's just a friend of mine who's just a huge metal fan. He doesn't do videos or have a radio show or anything like that. It's just a guy I really know and love and respect, and he picked this album. Steve Bodine of Harmless Rebel on YouTube, and Sean Griego, who was the drummer in Ultimatum in the early years up through the middle of Into Pit. They chose Megadeth, Peace Sells, but who's buying? Yeah, this album again is genre defining in my opinion. Some people might choose their first album. This album just is, I think, a step above that album. The songwriting's better, the guitar solos are better, the production's definitely better. It's still raw, it's still not perfect production, but it's just better. And the songs are absolutely brutal. I can remember hearing or seeing, I think it was either Wake Up Dead or it had to be Wake Up Dead on MTV's Headbangers Ball, and it would always be like real late at night with those guys, just all these fans just like climbing all over these cages, and man, I was just like, that's amazing. I loved it. And I mean, of course, that was what, 1985, 84, somewhere in that area. But yeah, this album is fantastic. Wake Up Dead, The Conjuring, Peace Sells, Devil's Island, Good Morning, Black Friday, Bad Omen, the cover of I Ain't Superstitious, and My Last Words. I probably don't like the I Ain't Superstitious. It's an old blues standard. I think Megadeth did a great thing. They took an old blues song and they made it a Megadeth song. So everything about this is defining. Even the Ed Repka cover. I mean, Ed Repka became the thrash metal artist. I mean, he's still one of the thrash metal artists, metal artists these days. So, yeah, genre defining for sure. Great pick by 4 very knowledgeable metal fans. All right, now we're getting into number 2 and number 1. All right, number 2 and number 1 are tied. So we basically have 2 number 1s. So we did have a clear winner, but like I said, one guy pulled out and changed his vote at the last minute. So number 2 goes to Exodus, Bonded by Blood. Yeah, this is just, again, I mean, this album should have been out in '83. This album should have been out with Kill 'Em All. I mean, these guys are around at the same time as Metallica. They just didn't get their due until a few years later, because this came out like 2 years or 3 years. I think, what, '83 was Kill 'Em All. This is '85, so 2 years later this album came out. And, again, everything about this, from the cover art to the songs to the look of the band. I mean, look at those band photos. I mean, that raw, youthful energy, not a perfect recording. Which again adds to the charm. That's one of the things about thrash metal. You don't always have to have that perfect recording. These days everything's recorded digitally, so everything gets kind of that almost perfect recording. This was, before the days of digital, so you're just in a room with a bunch of amps and microphones going to tape, and that's what you kind of get with this vicious thrash metal assault. Bonded by Blood, the first and only studio album for vocalist Paul Bailoff, who would be given his walking papers shortly after this, or I don't know exactly what happened with that. But regardless, he would be replaced by Steve Sosa. All right, number 1. Number 1. This was chosen by, again, 5 people, but Steve Gaines. Steve Gaines was in Avatar, Bloodlust. He's been playing for years in Anger is Art. He's a LA thrash legend, in my opinion. Jimmy P. Brown II, Deliverance fame, Eraserhead among others, but most known for his speed metal days in Deliverance. Jason Sherlock, this was his second choice. Again, drummer for Paramecium, drummer for Horde, I think the overall musician in Horde, and then of course the drummer for Mortification. Darren Hildebrandt, that's his name, that's his YouTube channel, and just a friend of mine and a huge metal fanatic. And then Rodney Dunsmore of Devastation, vocalist for Devastation, all chose Slayer, Rain in Blood. No big surprise here. I had a feeling it would come in either first or second. It really did if I would have kept, if I would not allowed one person to change their vote. But let's see here. Actually, would not have. Ron Haggerty voted for Bonded by Blood, so Bonded by Blood would end up being #1 over this had he not pulled his vote. So, regardless, it deserves the slot it gets. It is a very short album. It is barely a full-length album, almost an EP, coming in at under 30 minutes long. It is bookends by two of the greatest thrash metal songs ever written, in Angel of Death and Raining Blood. Of course, you can't play Raining Blood without playing Postmortem right before it. Havoc recorded a cover of Postmortem with Raining Blood, and it's fantastic as well. So coming at #1, albums that define thrash metal: Slayer, Raining Blood. There's no doubt about it. Everybody tried to copy this album after this album came out. So there you go. 22 albums that define thrash metal. Thanks for watching. It is a long video. I appreciate it. God bless. Stay strong.